Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it would be fair to say that this brewery are best known for their big cakey imperial stouts. That was really how they made their name back in the day. These days they are one of the best known Swedish craft beer brands and they're doing a lot more different styles of beer, I guess we could say. And it's been really interesting to see how they've developed over the last little while. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a new version of one of their classic beers. And I have to say, I'm really curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So hopefully it is as good as the original version, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Stockholm, Sundbyberg to be precise. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Omnipollo. So this particular beer is a new version of the Fatamorgana. So it's called Fatamorgana Galaxy Edition. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the Lokal Osmoska Rigged assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for December of 2021, and I think this is the third version of Fatamorgana that I'm trying. The first one, of course, was the original, and then a few months back we had the quadruple dry hopped version, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, the regular Fatamorgana is a little bit of an icon of the Swedish craft beer scene, and it's available in a number of Systembolaget stores nationwide actually, so definitely a Swedish beer to try if you hadn't already. Probably two of the other iconic ones would be the Nebuchadnezzar, which is their double West Coast IPA, and you also have the Noah Pecan Mud Pie as well, which is probably the most easily accessible cakey imperial stout that they do. So those three beers are the ones that you really need to try: Fatamorgana, Nebuchadnezzar, and the Noah Pecan Mud Pie. Those are all very, very interesting beers. But yeah, looking forward to this one, so let's crack on and do as we always do. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Omnipollo before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Omnipollo once again. So Omnipollo, as I've told you previously, was founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fenty, who is a long-time homebrewer, and Carl Grandin, who is a clothing designer. But the two met and they really just got to thinking about starting up their own brewery, having extensively discussed the insular craft beer scene in Sweden and abroad. And they just really wanted to reinvigorate it from both a stylistic sense and a gastronomic sense. So they felt that this combination of being a home brewer and a clothing designer really just worked for them. So the name Omnipollo is derived from omnipotent chicken, pollo of course being the Spanish word for chicken, and they were gypsy brewers up until 2020. A good number of their beers were brewed at the De Proefbrouwerij in Lokal Hifte near Ghent in Belgium, as well as in other places. A number of their imperial stouts were brewed at Dugges Bryggeri and Landvetter, just next to Gothenburg. But they also opened up the Omnipollo's hat in Stockholm a number of years back. This is a collaboration with Pizza Hut, and this became very, very popular in the city. It is really nice, and I do hope to get there and film an out and about video for you at some stage again. That would be really cool. But yeah, they've got some really good pizza there, and a number of the Omnipollo beers are on tap that you won't find in many other places actually. But in 2019 they also opened up a bar in Hamburg in Germany, and they had another one in Gothenburg that year as well, but that shut in 2020 unfortunately. And they have opened up a bar in Tokyo in Japan, which I'll also need to go and check out as well. But in March of 2020, these guys announced that they were not going to be gypsy brewers anymore. They were going to open up their own brewery in Sundbyberg in a former church, which had been home to Sundbyberg Sjuksbryggeri before. This place is now up and running. They apparently started off with a capacity of 100,000 litres of beer per year, and this has been scaled up to in the region of 600,000 litres of beer per year. And as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 420 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and you'll find a wide variety of different styles. So yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. The only other thing I would say about them is that they were known really for putting lots of kind of crazy adjuncts in their beers, many of which came from flavour essences and stuff like that. But yeah, a very, very interesting brewery, and one that have definitely kind of pushed the certainly pushed the boundaries of what craft brewing can be. But yeah, lots and lots of really random stuff has gone into Omnipollo beers over the years. But yeah, the Bianca Gozes that are going about, those are definitely worth trying. A little bit expensive, right enough, but it is worth trying one if you haven't already. But these guys, when it comes to putting adjuncts in the beer, the big Imperial stouts are where you want to be. The Yellow Belly, the Noah Pecan Monked Pie. When it comes to the more purist beers like this one, they're also very good as well. But Nebuchadnezzar, the double West Coast IPA, is one of my favourites. Fatamorgana is a bit of a classic, and they've been releasing a few different lager beers and stuff like that recently as well. So it's really interesting to see what Omnipollo are going to do next. But as I said earlier, probably one of the best known Swedish craft beer brands these days, and definitely worth checking out if you haven't done so already. But yeah, like I said, that's all I can really tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. Does look very, very nice. As you can see, it is pretty similar to what we've had from the other Fatamorganas before. I think they've just changed the colour scheme a little bit, but there you can see the planet at the top there. Then you've got that reflecting off the water, and you can see on the back of the can, if it will focus, Fatamorgana. Still love the 4K camera on this, it's awesome. As I say, the light in here is not the best. We need to get an overhead light, but hopefully we'll get that sorted at some point soon. But yeah, as you can see, 440ml can, this one, plain silver can top on it. And from what I understand, this beer has been brewed both at the Omnipollo Church, which now has a bar, I forgot to mention that earlier, and it's also been brewed at the 12% Beer Project over in the US too, who brew a number of the Evil Twin beers incidentally. But yeah, looks good. So it says, Fatamorgana Galaxy is enthusiastically crafted at our church brewery on Sturegatan 41 in Sundbyberg, Sweden. So yeah, Sundbyberg of course is to the northwest of Stockholm. But yeah, this one I believe cost me around 65 Swedish kronor, so that translates to roughly €6.50, somewhere in the region of £6 sterling, and probably in the region of like $7.50 American, just so that those of you watching across the world have got a little bit of a price reference. But as we mentioned earlier, 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So let's just crack on then and see how we go with this. The Fatamorgana Galaxy Edition from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg in Stockholm here in Sweden. Looking forward to this. Should be good. Yeah. So, oh, you can smell the hop off this as soon as you open it. So for those of you that don't know, Galaxy is an Australian hop. Comes in with about 14% alpha acid. Usually can give you a mix of passion fruit, mango, and quite a lot of pineapple in my experience. But yeah, lovely, lovely hop. It was all the rage for a while. It disappeared, but in recent times it seems to have been coming back, which is nice to see. But I think that is the majority of the beer out and into the glass at the moment. So we can take a look at it and then do all of our stuff with it. So yeah, anyway, not too much head on this one. So before that head does indeed fade away, I would say that this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. There's a nice ring around the edge of the glass there, but on top it has just faded away to be a very, very kind of thin, foamy layer. But yeah, just surprised there wasn't a little bit more of a head to it, of course. But one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, yeah, it looks pretty much as you would expect. So in terms of colour, this beer, if I shine the light through this one, the beer comes across as being quite a rich and quite bright yellow. I'm not sure how well that is going to come up on the camera right enough, but yeah, nice kind of bright, rich yellow colour for sure. And remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Although it's the type of malts that really, in the main, determine your EBC rating. Any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do will also play a role in determining the colour of the beer too. But when it comes to New England IPAs, or IPAs generally speaking, you don't really have to care about those 2 variables. In fact, it's only really sours that you need to care about that with. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a New England IPA. The level of haze on this one is pretty impressive. It's one of the soupier and gloopier ones I've come across in recent times, I would say. But remember, the level of haze depends on the wheat content, the oak content, and the yeast to a degree as well. And this can vary from brewery to brewery, beer to beer, and recipe to recipe, to be quite honest. There's not really a rule about this relating to the ABV, because obviously the more malt stuff that you put in the beer, the higher the ABV is going to end up. But yeah, it certainly looks like a lovely New England IPA, this one. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go. Nothing surprising about the appearance. Let's have a smell. Oh, yeah. It's a lovely, lovely smelling beer, this. Yeah. In terms of the this, just a general oversight of this beer, it comes across as really bright and very juicy. I do find this one just to be very, very nice and just fruity juicy. As I've told you in previous reviews, in my opinion, when it comes to New England IPAs, there are 6 different things you need to consider here. So they can be farmhousey and yeasty, rye leaning and grainy. These 2 variables are a bit more common in the American brewed examples than over here in Europe, but they can also be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary leaning and sweet. And quite often you will see many of these characteristics on show in any particular example of this beer style. But yeah, this one for me strikes me as being very smooth and oaty and nice and juicy actually. The green component comes across as very fresh as well actually. So yeah, this is I think going to be pretty damn good. But I always enjoyed the original Fatamorgana, so maybe there's a little bit of bias in my mind with this one. So just keep that in mind, take things with a pinch of salt, as we always say. But yeah, aroma wise, this one comes across really nicely. I'm going to say that straight away. Lovely, fresh, soft, juicy New England IPA. So let's just break the aroma down for you a little bit more and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So on the malty side of things, this beer, you get a little bit of bread crust out of it for sure. So a little bit of bread crust lying underneath. You can smell a soft white bready character to it, which I think comes across really, really nicely. And you do get a little bit of the wheat out of this one. At the back of the nose you can smell a little bit of the wheat, but it's not as bitey and pungent as I've had in some other beers before actually. But still, I think this one, as I've said, I think it really leans towards the oaty, creamy side of things. And when I was talking about the sweetness that you get out of New England IPAs earlier, I would actually say that that's a lot more prominent in many of the newer examples of this beer style. This one, it does take me back to sort of 2014, 2015, 16 when this style really first appeared on the scene. Because back in the day they were always really, it was wheat, oats, and it was the wheat, the oats, and a little bit of the barley malt there, so they were always quite bready and smooth. But more recently they've been getting a little bit more oily and a little bit more sweet and things like this. And yeah, they're just using this one and changing the hop varieties. They're using the original recipe and changing the hop a little bit. So yeah, it makes sense that this one comes across as a bit more old school. But I do like beers that give you this kind of nostalgic feel actually. So this one I'm sure I'm going to enjoy. But as I say, a little bit of bread crust in there, but that takes a bit of a back seat. Good little bit of white bread, some smooth wheaty character, and then also a nice kind of oaty creaminess as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together is really quite nice in that sense. The malt base has a slight degree of sweetness to it. I mean, on top of the oaty character, I do get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. But when it's a big 8% New England double IPA, you have to kind of expect that. There is a degree of sweetness to this one, but for me, it's got a lovely, very smooth, creamy oaty character coming out of it. So yeah, goes together nicely. But the more that you smell of it, the more the wheat starts to build a little bit of pungency, particularly at the back of the nose, but a lovely malty base to this one. So let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, for me, on the hoppy part of this beer, the green component, there's definitely a wee touch of earthiness in there, absolutely, a little bit of earthiness at the back of the nose, but quite smooth. The green component overall actually comes across as quite wet and quite fresh in a lot of ways. So yeah, it has got a little bit of yeah, I mean, the floral aromaticity that you get with this one, it's not really pungent or spicy or anything like that. It is like a very wet, kind of fresh sort of vibe that it gives you. Yeah, aroma-wise, I think this one is pretty nice in that sense. So yeah, lovely, quite soft floral aromaticity to it. On the front of the nose, you get that wet, freshly cut grass sort of thing. And it's not even all that zesty. It just smells fresh, if that makes sense. It's a bit of an unusual thing to say, but yeah, it really strikes me as smelling quite fresh and just soft in a sense. This beer overall, I think the aroma of this one really is, it's very soft and juicy New England IPA. But let's just focus on the fruity side of it now. I think there's not really much more to say about the green component. A little bit of smooth earthiness, nice kind of soft floral aromaticity, and also a wee bit of a kind of soft grassy character as well. So yeah, I think this goes together rather nicely. So fruity wise, it's kind of what you'd expect, to be honest, if you know the hop, I should say. So for me, there's a little bit of that more pungent passion fruit in it, but I'd say that takes a back seat to the kind of more mellow and softer aromas. You do get you get a bit of a kind of softer, more mellow passion fruit in there as well, but I get a lot of juicy mango out of this one. I've always found that that Galaxy gives you that soft mango-y character, but there's definitely a few kind of apricot-y notes in there as well, absolutely. Yeah, so a bit of a stronger passion fruit, a softer, more mellow passion fruit, juicy mango, wee bit of apricot. I do get quite a bit of pineapple out of this one. So for me, this beer it really starts to lean a little bit more towards the pineapple the more that I smell of it as well. But I also want to say there's a teeny little bit of orange in here. I can't remember what hops. It says that they've basically amped up the amount of Galaxy in this one, which would make sense going by the name, of course. But it seems that they have still kept some of the other hops in there, and I'm not sure whether exactly what the other hops were. If it was, Galaxy, Citra, Mosaic, that to me sounds familiar. But I certainly get a wee bit of an orangey character out of this one. You can smell a wee bit of that tangerine, orangey sort of thing, which is most likely to come from Mosaic. If it is, and the wee bit of earthiness you get out of this one makes me think Mosaic as well. There are other options, of course. It could be, it could be the Pacifica from New Zealand. It could be Sabro. It could be Amarillo. But this, as I say, is one of the more old school recipes. So I think it's more likely to be either Amarillo or Mosaic. And it doesn't strike me as being quite zesty enough to be Amarillo. I think it's more likely to be Mosaic. But like I say, I can't remember off the top of my head what the hops were in this beer originally. But yeah, certainly there's a wee bit of a tangerine orange note in there, but mainly, yeah, bit of pungent passion fruit, more kind of mellow passion fruit, big juicy mangoes, wee bit of apricot underneath, a lot of pineapple, and then just a wee touch of that tangerine orange sort of thing. But yeah, beautiful smelling beer, lovely big creamy oaty leaning New England double IPA, this one. So let's get the rest of it into the glass. You can see it's got even more hazy just with that last little bit of pour there. There's no sediment visible in the bottom of the can, so I'll just like to have another wee look at that so you can see this beer has gone even more kind of murky and hazy in that sense since we've poured it. But beautiful looking beer, I have to say. So yeah, one or two little bits of sediment floating around in this one now, you can see, but it's all natural, it will all be good. Let's have a taste of this beer and see how we go. As I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma before you get stuck in, but we're going to taste this one now. So this one is the Fatamorgana Galaxy Edition, a New England double IPA coming in at 8% ABV from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg in the northwest of Stockholm here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn nice. Definitely a throwback to some of the more old school New England IPAs that we've had on the channel over the years as well. And what I said earlier about it being a big oaty, creamy sort of thing, that is definitely right with this one. Yeah, I like this. I don't remember it being quite this colour right enough, but I could be mistaken. Maybe I need to get a bottle of the original Fatamorgana and do a stream review or something like that with it. But yeah, this one is absolutely lovely. Yeah, this beer, big thumbs up from me. It really is just a big kind of oaty, creamy, smooth sort of thing. I mean, Omnipollo have of course done many more adventurous beers than this one, but there is just something, I've said this about some of the other breweries that have come up in Sweden recently, like Fermenterarna, Duck Pond and things like that. They always produce good beers, but you always remember the first one that you had. There's always a bit of a nostalgia factor when it comes to beer and your favourite beers. Fatamorgana is a little bit like that for me when it comes to Omnipollo, and the same with Nebuchadnezzar. I can try, some of the newer New England IPAs from them, and I'll enjoy them, but there's just always something about the first ones that you try that sticks with you. And I have to say that about this. I had a couple of New England IPAs over the last few months from Omnipollo, but this one just sticks in the memory a little bit more. So yeah, this is pretty good. So let's break this one down and explain the flavour, as we always do. But yeah, big, smooth, creamy, oaty New England IPA, this one, absolutely. And it's fresh as well. You can still taste a little bit of the green from the hop in this one. You can feel a little bit of that dustiness you'll get from the dry hopping. So that tells you that it's pretty damn fresh. Anyway, straight away across the middle third of your palate, or the middle and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that kind of bread crusty layer there. That forms the anchor of the beer. So we'll focus on the middle third of your palate now. Base of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the wee bit of bread crust there. It gets a little bit drier and more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste. On top of that, you've got that slightly more dense white bready layer coming out of it, and then you can feel the wheat just sitting on top of that and thickening things out as well. So, on top of that, you get the oatiness. And like I say, the oatiness for me is the dominating factor in the malt base here. That bread crust, the barley malt and the wheat, those actually feel quite compressed in that middle third of your palate for sure. But then the oats come on top of it, and you can feel the oats come straight down the middle line of your palate. So it's got a nice big, straight, creamy, oaty character there. And again, as I've mentioned in many of these New England IPA reviews before, one of the ways to really tell how fresh a beer is from the oats, because the older the beer gets, the kind of drier the oaty character becomes. But in the early days when the beer is fresh, it's lovely and sort of just creamy, and you can get that in this one straight away. So yeah, you've got a big circle in that middle third of your palate, lovely and soft, and you've got that big kind of creamy, oaty sort of thing coming out of it. And that is really nice, as I say. But as you go further out towards the edges of the palate, you do start to get a little touch of that more dry oaty character, but you get a bit of sweetness out of it at the same time. But in the dead centre of your palate, you have that, in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a bit of a sweet caramelly note there, but it's quite minimal. I would say that there's a smaller circle within the big oaty circle that is more of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And yeah, I really like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, big oaty, that big oaty creamy circle in this one is just really nice. And I miss the beers that were as big and smooth and creamy as this. I think more and more of them are these days. A lot of the Swedish New England IPAs that I've had have been a little bit more kind of farmhousey leaning. So that is quite interesting. But this one, it just really shows you the diversity within this particular style and how the style's evolved over the years. But yeah, the OT creaminess that you get out of this is very nice. But I think the further you go into the aftertaste, it really does start to lean a little bit more towards the wheaty end of the spectrum, which is interesting. But I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of your palate in this one. As I say, bread crust, barley malt, bit of wheat, the big oaty creamy circle, then within that little bit of a butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, and you've got the wee bit of sweet caramel in the middle of the palate. But that's caramel is very, very minimal. It is just a tiny, tiny little bit concentrating the dead centre of your palate. But when the beer is 8% ABV, you would kind of expect this. You also have to remember your palate is changing a lot all the time, so you will notice flavours differently the more craft beer you drink, of course. But yeah, let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. You can feel a slightly stronger bread crusty presence. Then the base of that back third of your palate is a little bit more kind of it is a little bit more, how would we say? Yeah, it is a little bit. Yeah, you do get a wee bit of that more kind of bread crusty. You get a wee bit of that more kind of bread crusty element out of it. Remember, more bitter, grainy flavours come out toward the back of the palate. The sweeter ones come out further forward. But yeah, you've got a wee bit of that more bread crusty thing. You can feel the bready layer is a little bit thicker. Then on top of that, you get the wheatiness, and there is quite a bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of that back third of your palate. But on top of that, you get a wee bit more of a kind of doughy, yeasty kind of thing in there. And there's a wee touch of a kind of spicy character to it, so you can feel the yeasty notes just sitting on top of that. You can feel the yeasty notes just kind of sitting on top of that that wheaty layer in there. And the flavour in the back third of your palate definitely feels taller, so you can feel that as you come further forward from the very back of your palate. The flavour is a bit taller. Then as you move forward, it condenses down. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, the flavours just kind of squash together a little bit. So yeah, malty side of this beer and yeasty side of this beer is really nice. And like I say, it's a little bit more old school. It's definitely leaning more towards that oaty, creamy end of the spectrum compared to some of the other New Englands that we've had in recent times. But lovely, lovely malt base on this one, and the malt base is critical for me. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So, back corners of your palate, definitely a wee bit of earthiness, which you're always going to get. And remember, New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition hopping and dry hopping. Late addition hopping gives you only a little bit of bitterness. Dry hopping gives you pretty much no bitterness. Those two types of hopping are more for flavour and aroma, but early addition hopping, which is used in addition to those two in West Coast IPAs, that is the one that gives you a lot of bitterness. And this beer does have a fair wee bit of bitterness to it, actually, and that kind of shows you again that it's one of the early New England IPAs. But yeah, a little bit of earthiness there. I would say the green component's a lot more prominent in the flavour than it actually is in the aroma. But as you come further forward, you do get a wee bit of a kind of big dankness to it. And Galaxy, of course, always had a bit of that really deep floral aromaticity to it. So you get quite a nice big deep dank floral aromaticity. It gets a little bit spicier the further forward that you come toward the front corners of the palate. Then around the front curve of the tongue, the beer is a little bit lighter and more grassy. And there's a wee touch of zestiness coming out of this one too. So yeah, I think the green component of this one really has a lot more floral aromaticity to it than the aroma would have you believe, but it's quite dank at the same time. So maybe there has been a bit of early addition hop in this, because that really it certainly resonates in this one, and you need a bit of early addition hopping, I think, to get that kind of effect. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of the beer. So, front third of your palate then, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, wee bit of bread crust in the base of that front third of your palate is a nice smooth white bready note, but you also get a wee bit of that kind of oaty smooth and creaminess there. But sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, this one shows off the Galaxy hop really, really nicely. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you get that really strong, pungent passion fruit there, almost to the point where it's a little bit like grapefruit, but it's a really strong passion fruit. As you move further forward, it just mellows out a little bit. Then you start to get a big juicy mango, and there is, a little trace of a small apricot note or something underneath, but mainly it's a big juicy mango. And as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, there is a wee bit of a kind of tangerine orangey note to this one. You do get a little bit of that in there, but I actually get a lot more pineapple out of it. I think it's almost like the kind of orangey tangerine note just takes a wee bit of a back seat. But yeah, passion fruit, mango, and pineapple for me, those are the main things with the fruit in this beer. And you do get a bit more of an oily, pineapple-y character on the front little bit of that front third of your palate, but there's almost a teeny little bit of lime just behind the very front tip of your palate, and that makes me wonder, could there be a bit of citra in this? And that would also explain the pungency of the passion fruit as well, because citra will give you a wee bit of a grapefruity, passion fruity sort of thing, and it'll also amplify the mango too. But remember, the main focus in this particular beer is the galaxy, so we have to bear that in mind. But whatever they've done with this, it is very, very nice, and I wouldn't expect anything less when it's a new edition of Fatamorgana. This beer was always a bit of a beast in its day, and it still stands up. It has stood the test of time. So to up the galaxy in a little bit, I think is pretty interesting. Whatever recipe they're using with this, it works. It really does. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of the beer. Let's round off with a look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied, it's kind of in that region. Yeah, carbonation is really nice and smooth. It has that lovely kind of clean mouthfeel. You can taste the quality of the Swedish water in this, of course. But yeah, it's got a little bit of a kind of slickness to it at the same time, but a nice kind of slick, creamy character. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I wouldn't be surprised if this one sits around the kind of 50 IBU mark. I think this one does have a wee bit more bitterness to it. As I said, this was a more old school New England IPA when people were still used to the kind of West Coasters and things. So I think that's why the bitterness seems a little bit higher on this. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one was a wee bit higher and like 50 IBUs or something. But remember, IBU count is my weakest point of beer reviewing. Always take them with a bit of a pinch of salt. But the malty base in this one, as I say, it's really nice and smooth. This is a more old school IPA. There's not too much in the way of sweetness, or not a lot really, to be honest, in terms of sweetness in the malt base in this one. And the fruity side of the beer is lovely, soft and juicy with just a little bit of dried fruit character to it. But yeah, another lovely, lovely beer from Omnipollo, and considering what this one is, a new edition of the Fatamorgana, I'm really not surprised. I like this one a little bit better than some of the newer ones that they've put out there. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but the nostalgia factor for me is a big deal. I like trying new versions of old beers that I've had before. There's just always something about that really rings true with me. But yeah, a lovely beer, this one, and a big thumbs up to Omnipollo for this. But I think we can round off the review there. So yeah, this one was the Fatamorgana Galaxy Edition, a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, coming in at 8% ABV from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg to the northwest of Stockholm here in Sweden. Awesome stuff, and this is definitely worth trying if you happen to come across it. And try the original Fatamorgana as well if you haven't already. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Omnipollo, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point very soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and comment in the section below. Slange at Skull, cheers to the Fatamorgana Galaxy Edition from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg, Stockholm, Sweden. Cheers just now.